My friends, let me lighten your somewhat cloudy weekend with a report that will fill your hearts with hope, maybe even exuberance. It is the story of the German economic miracle that transformed the nation from virtual total misery and destruction into a blooming landscape of wealth. It did so at least in part with the help of the United States, help that became known as Marshall Plan. Why am I telling you this? Because the current situation in the United States is somewhat similar, with the economy in shambles and an infrastructure that is in dire need of repair. Granted, it may not quite be as serious as Europe in 1947, but extraordinary circumstances, namely the perpetual threat from hostile nations to destroy our economy by interfering with our energy supply, make the situation equally dismal. Let me get the latter out of the way so you agree with me on the seriousness of the threat. According to the Jerusalem Issue Brief, on December 15, 2004, bin Laden published an audio recording in which he demanded that the crude price, then $46 per barrel, should be at least $100. In case you didn't notice, he surpassed that goal with the help of his OPEC conspirators in 2008. If you think that is history, dream on. A couple of weeks ago, OPEC made the decision to cut its members' output by 2 million barrels per day. Only a desperate Bush diplomacy kept them from actually doing it so far. Follow me for a minute into macroeconomics and allow me to illuminate a couple of terms that are constantly misinterpreted. First, the term free market economy. I took it from the web so that you can do this again whenever you need it. Here's the term free market on Wikipedia. A free market is a market in which property rights are voluntarily exchanged at a price arranged completely by the parties. Sorry, but that doesn't even come close. Here's another one. Let me read it. The free market economy is an economy in which the allocation for resources is determined only by their supply and the demand for them. This is mainly a theoretical concept, as every country, even capitalist ones, places restrictions on the ownership and exchange of commodities. Some proponents of free market economics interpret this to mean that governments should not participate or interfere in the economy one way or another, even when there is a rogue attempt, or better attack, on the economy, such as OPECS and Big Oil's manipulation of the crude prices. Next, the term demand-side economics. It analyzes the relationship between the demand for goods and services and prices or income. It is said to be an alternate term for Keynesian economics. Finally, the term supply-side economics, a term that emphasizes aggregate supply rather than aggregate demand. Under supply-side economics, government measures include tax cuts, reduction in public expenditure, and deregulation. To get a better understanding, let's look for a second at the history of budget balances of former presidents JFK, Johnson, and Nixon. Looks pretty good to me. Next, Ford, Carter, and Reagan. That's where the term Reaganomics came up, him being a leading proponent of supply-side economics, deregulation, and tax cuts. Next, Bill Clinton. Wow. His economic team managed not only to balance the budget, but to have a surplus that cut back on the national debt, though it took a few years. Now let's look at the foremost proponents of supply-side economics, deregulation, tax cuts. Herbert Walker Bush to the left and George W. to the right. I don't know about you, but it appears to me that somebody has to pay for the national debt caused by supply-side economists. Did you say our children? Oh, then that's okay, as long as we don't have to pay for it and just continue stealing from them. I mean that cynical. But don't get me wrong, there are times when emergencies, like a breakdown of the economy, requires deficit spending. Let's get serious. I'm open to suggestions, but it appears to me that the current economic crisis is foremost caused by two major factors: the war and the reduction of purchase power by crude manipulation. I will simplify this somewhat. Given that 2/3 of the economy are created by consumer spending, the economy is purchase power dependent. Now imagine that a significant portion of that purchase power is used to pay for a product, here gas, for which the money flows to foreign countries. That money does not go to buy domestic products, but is lost, causing commerce to tumble, if I may be that bold. Indeed, it does barely contribute to the domestic economy. Don't get me wrong, I am for a free market economy, but with limitations. The problem I have with the extreme free market proponents is that they dogmatically insist that the government should under no circumstances interfere, even when we have a terrorist attack on our economy via crude manipulations or pipeline blow-ups by terrorists. And that is where my friendship ends. Why don't we allow fast food chain robberies? Where's the difference? Now, let me get back to where I started, the German economic miracle of the late 40s and early 50s. It began with the influx of money, in part through the Marshall Plan, in part by formation of a bank specifically created to supply credit for reconstruction. Remember, Germany was in ruins at the time. Frankly, the difference to us is only one of degree. Besides that, we need to repair the infrastructure urgently. I have not the slightest concern that the funds needed for that purpose will contribute to improve the purchase power of consumers and eventually even generate sufficient surplus to pay off the national debt. What is left is the absolute urgent independence from hostile foreign nations concerning the oil supply. Otherwise, they will play their trump card like Beethoven played the piano. And much like Beethoven, these OPEC guys are deaf to anything but their own play. Otherwise, I'm reasonably confident that under the influence of the Clinton crowd plus Krugman, we have reason to be hopeful. So much for your weekend. Oh well. See ya.